Welcome to Managing a Windows 2012 Server Environment. I am your instructor, Robert McMillen. Our study materials used today are going to be from the Inside Out Windows Server 2012 book by William R. Stanek. Today is Lab 2 in Part 1, and we're going to discuss network and domain membership and startup and recovery options. Network and domain membership. There's a couple of different things you can do when you install a server. One is you can leave it as it is and let it be part of a work group. The other is that you can create a domain. If you leave it as a work group, then the server and all computers that are also connected in the network are going to be at the same level. You're not going to have the server be above the workstations. They're all going to be at the same level. Now, if you create a domain, then the entire scenario changes. With a domain, you now have the server that is in charge. So let's take a look here at a server that has just been installed. Now if you go there we go, we'll click on the Start button and we'll right click and choose Properties. And you can see here that this particular server is a member of a work group. Now if we minimize that and we go to a server that is already a domain controller, then we can see here that this particular server will show up as a domain. So we can see widget llc.internal is our Active Directory domain. So this particular server can control any server that's connected to it and part of the domain, whereas our first server is a member of a work group and is equal to every other computer. The security is much better when you have a domain controller. When you have a work group, you have to duplicate all usernames and passwords that are on people's computers also on the server. In a domain, you can create the username and password once, and all users can connect no matter which computer they log into. Now, besides a workgroup and domain, you need to have a communication protocol. The protocol is just a language. A language allows us to communicate, a common language allows us to communicate from one person to another, just like someone who speaks English but doesn't speak Spanish is going to have a difficult time communicating with someone who only speaks Spanish. You have the same issue with computers. Computers have to speak the same language to each other. When computers were new and networking was new, this was a real issue as different scientists created different protocols. Finally, we've all decided to use TCP/IP as our communication protocol. TCP is one protocol and IP is another, but we put them together to make one protocol together using version 4 or version 6. Now version 4 is the one that we've been using all these years. It has 4 billion IP addresses. Version 6 has many, many more, as it's 2 to the 128th power. This is roughly about 80 trillion IP addresses per person for everyone on Earth, whereas version 4 doesn't even have enough IP addresses for everyone on Earth. So that is the protocol that we use, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Another protocol a lot of companies use is IPX/SPX. That's the protocol that came out with Novell, and there's still a lot of companies and government institutions that have stuck with Novell all this time, and they still use this particular protocol. Newer versions of Novell, however, are using TCP/IP now instead, but you can use either or both. It's up to you. Client for Microsoft Networks, that's the client portion that allows the server to be a part of the domain, and that is listed under the network connections area, which we will go over in just a minute. So if we go back to our server, let's go back to our original server, the one that's part of the work group. And you'll notice a slight difference between the two. This is the R2 version of 2012, and the other server is the first release. So the difference you'll see, of course, is the start button. So if we want to check out the network settings that are on this particular device, we can click on the control panel, and then inside the control panel, it will tell us all kinds of information about this network connection. So we'll change over to the large icon view. We'll go ahead and click on Network and Sharing Center. And from here, we'll click on Change Adapter Settings. Here is our network connection. So let's go ahead and right click on that and choose Properties. Now from here, we can see the adapter type. We can actually click on Configure, which takes us into the Device Manager, shows us the properties of the adapter. It also shows us that we have Client for Microsoft Networks is checked. So you need that on both the client and the server in order to be able to log into the server from the clients. We also have File and Printer Sharing for Microsoft Networks checked. That allows us to share files and printers, which we will get into in some later labs. QoS Packet Scheduler allows us to prioritize certain packets so we can have certain traffic be allowed no matter how much other traffic is going on. We have the multiplexer protocol, which we won't get into here, but it does allow us to add additional functionality to the network card. Here we have the link layer topology discovery responder. You don't have to have these on, but they do work with the QoS packet scheduler in order to prioritize traffic. Now we see the two different versions of TCP/IP. You can see that by default it's set to obtain an IP address automatically. Well, servers are going to want to have a static IP address that don't change, so the computers that connect to them can always find them. So we'll just go ahead and put in an IP address, and then we'll do the default subnet mask and then the gateway. That is going to be our router. The preferred DNS server, if this is a domain controller, you'll want to make this itself. But if it's not the domain controller, you'll want to point it to where the domain controller is for the domain, so that way it can find all the resources on the network it needs to find. And when we're done, we can just go ahead and click OK. Now, TCP/IP version 6 is a lot different. This uses a hexadecimal system with semicolons between each one. You can also set the subnet prefix length, and of course it has a default gateway just like the version 4 has. It also uses a preferred DNS and an alternate DNS, again, just like version 4. So we could leave it at obtain automatically if we want, or we can go in and set a manual address. And when we're done, we can go ahead and click OK. You have several options when you go to try to troubleshoot an operating system. You have the startup repair tool, you have safe mode options, you have the last known good boot up, and you have directory services restore mode. Now the startup repair tool that comes with Windows Server 2012 allows the operating system to go in and fix itself. So if you choose this option, it will find any kind of files that are causing a problem with the operating system booting, and it will fix them. The safe mode options usually are for issues with hardware, where hardware drivers are not working properly and they're causing the operating system to not boot at all or to become unstable. So you can go with safe mode, which is the regular graphical user interface, but with the hardware devices that are attached to be disabled. You can go safe mode with command prompt. That's if you want even less hardware devices, such as some motherboard resources, also disabled. Safe mode with networking is the same as safe mode, except it does enable the network card, so you can go out to the internet, and that allows other people to connect to the server to help you troubleshoot. So that is very useful if you want to connect to the internet while you're trying to troubleshoot your issue. Last known good, that is the type of boot up that allows you to boot up with the same settings you had the last time you successfully booted into Windows without errors. This, when it does work properly, can save you from a bad driver update or Windows update, because it rolls you back to the previous good boot up time. The directory services restore mode, that's if Active Directory is keeping the server from booting properly on a domain controller. This does not work on a regular server. So if it is a domain controller and it won't boot up properly and it's because of Active Directory, then choose directory services restore mode, and it allows you to either restore from backup or it allows you to repair Active Directory right in a safe mode type environment. And then accessing recovery options, I'm going to show you that right now. So when we restart our computer, we're going to choose a different option. So go to settings, go to power, and I'll choose restart. Choose anything you want. This is for logging purposes only. Doesn't matter what you choose. Okay, on the restart, and we're in a virtual machine. Go ahead and restart again here. It's going to prompt us to boot from the DVD, which we'll go ahead and choose. Okay, we're going to go ahead and boot from the CD-ROM. And now it's booting from the CD-ROM, which is just an ISO file we created and told the virtual machine to use that. Once it's done booting up, we have the option to click Repair Your Computer. From here, we can click Continue, Exit, and Continue to Windows Server, Troubleshoot, Refresh or Reset your PC, or use Advanced Tools, or just Turn Off. We're going to choose to Troubleshoot. So we've got a command prompt we can use, or the System Image Recovery, which will allow us to grab a repair from a specific image, or we can choose the command prompt. Alright, once we are in the sources directory in the command prompt, we just do a cd to recovery, and we do a start repair. And now it's going to go through a bunch of different repair issues, and there's nothing wrong with this particular one, so it's going to say it couldn't repair the PC, but let's go ahead and click on advanced options, and then you can type more commands from the command prompt. If there was something that could have been fixed, then from there it would have done that, and hopefully that your problem will be all set. When you're all done, you can just restart the computer and go on your happy way. Now the other options you have here is going into the safe mode that we talked about earlier. And what safe mode does is it disables various different hardware devices like we discussed. You can get into safe mode by holding down the Shift key and pressing F8. Then you get the See Advanced Repair options, which you won't get if you just boot off the CD. You click on Troubleshoot, and now we see startup options, something again you won't see under the normal repair options. Then we'll click Restart, and now we should have the option to boot into safe mode. And there we go. So now we've got safe mode with networking, safe mode with command prompt, low resolution video in case you've got video problems, last known good configuration, debugging mode if you're trying to troubleshoot something and you're a programmer, disable automatic restart on system failure. That's some new options there. Disable driver signature enforcement if you use a lot of third-party drivers. Disable early launch anti-malware driver in case your antivirus program is causing problems, or start Windows normally. So we don't see the directory restore option because this is not a domain controller, but we would see that if that was the case. So let's go ahead and just choose safe mode, and we'll see how that looks when it boots up. Alright, it's all started up, so let's go ahead and log in. And you can see in the corners, all four corners, it says safe mode. It'll ask why we shut down earlier. We'll just choose anything from the list just for logging purposes. And then the Windows Help and Support box opens up as well. So from here, a lot of the hardware is not going to work in safe mode, but we can get to our event logs and various different other things that will help us troubleshoot the issue. So in summary, we discussed network and domain membership, the differences between those, the startup and recovery options in case you're having trouble booting up your Windows Server 2012. Next up is Part 2, Lab 1 of managing a Windows Server 2012.